One question we all ask as filmmakers when we meet someone who's ahead of us is always, what should I know? What's the one most important thing in this journey as a filmmaker? And I think that question, whilst valid, because you always want that next step, you always want to take that one next step. The challenge with the answer to that question is not an answer that you want, because I think film has a lot of moving parts and each part is important, that neglecting any other part, people often say, oh, does gear matter? And we say, no, gear doesn't matter. What matters is the story. But then if you put your focus just on the story, gear can also be a giveaway in terms of the film that you're making. And then someone could tell you lenses are the most important, but also the camera body behind your camera is important. So it's like every aspect of it is important. An important topic that I think we should talk about it as filmmakers is pre-production. And I think in pre-production, there's a lot of moving pieces that have to come together. But some of my recent work that I've done, it made me appreciate a lot of pre-production, and it's also made me see the importance of pre-production. As a cinematographer, my focus is always on the visual cues of a film and having an understanding of what we're going to be shooting. That helps us to schedule, to plan, to really know what we're doing. Because on the day, the idea is we have a 12-hour day and we want to maximize every minute of it. And we want to know what is there, what is needed at what point in time. So pre-production not only helps us with knowing the equipment we need on the day, it also helps us with knowing what we're going to be shooting on the day and how we're going to be shooting on the day. So pre-production involves a lot of moving pieces. As I said, one of the main things is when you get a script, when it's time to shoot, you want to get together with your director and production designer and have a discussion of how a film is going to look, how things are going to be, what is our modus operandi, what are we going for, what's the vision. So it's well known that for every film, we are all trying to achieve the director's vision. Whatever the director sees, we're all trying to do that. And the director has to be able to communicate their ideas with different department heads so that that can be done. And for them on the day to focus on talent performance, whilst everybody else focuses on what they need to do, what they've been trusted to do. So the first key thing when you're meeting with the director for the first time as a cinematographer, there are questions like, are there references that you would like me to think about in terms of how you want this to be shot? They can say, hey, I really like the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. I would like a film like that. I would like it to look like that. That gives you the idea of what to think about. You think about, okay, so there's tungsten lighting, there's all these things. Now you have a reference. Or they'll say, hey, I really like how the Marvel movies look like. And then you're like, okay, which one? It can be Guardians of the Galaxy, it can be anything. That helps you know, okay, this is digital. It's going to have that clean look that we're going for. What type of equipment goes in there? What type of lenses? What type of camera? What type of this goes into that? Or they'll say, hey, I like, the Creed movies. And then you're like, oh, that was a lot of anamorphic. So those references then help you know what the director is thinking in their mind and how you can get that image. So it also helps you with communication. You can then pull up some images and look at them and say, okay, is this where we're going in terms of lighting, in terms of the feeling? We recently had a director who looked at us and was like, I want the cold feeling tungsten look. And we were all confused, like the gaffer and me, like, wait, what? And the challenge that happens, a lot of times people use these technical terms, but they mean different things to different people. So you may want a cold look. Cold for a lot of photographers and people looks like blue. And then tungsten is orange. So those are opposing colors. So it's like, what is it really are you going for? And then with the visual cues, you're able to help your team succeed. And this is good to know prior. It's good to know in pre-production. That way we have the right tools needed to shoot. The next thing that you want to do is touch base with the production designer in terms of how will the space look like. So what are we shooting in? What are you designing? I recently had a shoot in a studio, and for my first time working in a studio, it wasn't really the best experience because the room we were using is basically built for green screen. And when you're in there, when the story doesn't need green screen. So it's like, okay, we have to cover all the green and we have limited space that we can show. So then you're now looking at what equipment do you have? Do we have enough equipment to hide? And then in terms of composition, how do I compose the shot to hide things that are not necessarily needed to be seen? So if you have enough pre-production time where you're able to go into the spaces, you're able to come up with a proper plan and knowledge of how you're going to set it up. So it really helps with that. And also, Roger Deakins, when you go on Roger Deakins' website, he shows you these plans that he made for his shoots. And one of the things that in pre-production, when you know the space you'll be shooting in, when you have an idea of what the blocking is, you're able to come up with floor plans of how you're going to light and what you're going to show. And when you have time to be able to go through all those things, you'll be able to, once again, have the right equipment on the day, know how much amount of people you need, know who's available and what's going to happen. Pre-production is also a great time to do lens testing because different lenses produce a different picture, and depending on the feeling that you're going for, it is important to test them before. So I've shown some videos on here of when we go to rentals to see which lenses to get, depending on what the director is envisioning. And then we're able to test different lenses and send them back to the director, and he can choose them like, yeah, I like this one, I like that one. And as me as a DOP, you'll be thinking, okay, based on the mood and tonality and vision that you told me, maybe we should go with the vintage lens, or maybe we should go with the more digital lens, and you have all that. I recently had a shoot where we didn't do any pre-production, and that wasn't anybody's fault. It's the nature of the festival we're participating. It's called the Run and Gun Festival in Vancouver, BC, where basically you have 48 hours to come up with the script, shoot it, edit it, and make a full short film in 48 hours. This thing is ridiculous and crazy because once a script is finished, right, you essentially have, let's say, if the writer takes 6 hours or 48 hours, you have 42 hours, and then you have to give the editor almost 10 to 24 hours to edit, right? So the amount of finding shots on the day, making things work on the day is a lot. So it's difficult to plan ahead for these things. So when you're shooting, I remember when we were in the room, we're like, okay, what equipment do we have? We don't have a lot of equipment, and the production didn't have a big budget, so we just had to work with what we had. And that it almost took us 2 to 3 hours to set up our first shot because we're trying to maximize the light that we have, which is not a lot because we have 2 lights and we have this massive room. So you have to cut out white shots. If the director wants white shots, I cannot give you white shots because I don't have the tools that I need. But if we had time to prep for it, we would have known, okay, this is what we have to do. What are the solutions on the day? So pre-production for me in that instance, it was really missed, where you're like, oh, we could have spoken about a lot of things. And then I just couldn't understand the script myself. Like I couldn't understand the story because of the way sort of it was written. I felt like that was the first time, because usually when I write my scripts, I feel like I understand them because I've lived with the story. But when I read someone else's script, I was like, I don't really understand the grammar or tonality of the script that I was reading. So my interpretation was always off. So I was having to rely on what we are doing, on the director, in terms of what's next. What do you need me to do? How do you need me to frame this? So I feel like if there was space and time to be able to think about shots and talk about the script, I might have understood it a little bit more. But in this instance, I just didn't. And it is what it is, But it made me understand and appreciate those meetings you have prior to going to a shoot. The next thing that I feel like is a benefit for pre-production is the equipment that you're going to use. Different spaces require different things. So in certain spaces, you can bring in equipment in terms of technical things like your C-stands, like cranes, like sliders, like stuff like that can fit. But sometimes you would find yourself, let's say you're shooting in an apartment building and you have to bring up equipment through the elevator. How much equipment can you do? How much equipment can you put in a space? How many people are going to be in a space? We found ourselves having 3 subjects sitting on a wall watching TV. In that instance, remember, we only had 2 lights. So you now have a key light and you have a backlight, but you don't have the third light that will create that TV feeling. And you're like, oh man, I wish I knew. Then you'd have come up with solutions for that. But in those instances where you don't have it, then it's all about just being in the moment and taking it in. But I would say for me, the other projects that I've done, where we had a lot of time just to get in pre-production, they were very beneficial on the day. And one thing is you're constantly moving because you're on schedule and you're trying to get as many shots as you can to tell an entire story. And it's quite important. So I hope you learned something out of this. In the next few minutes, I'm just going to show you how different lenses react to the same lighting so that it helps you understand when I say pre-production is important for equipment, what that means. It just helps to show what a different lens does for you within the space with everything being held. I'm not going to change the lighting setup. I'm just changing the lenses. Let's do it. So right now I'm shooting on the Sony 50 f1.8. This is how this light would react in this moment. It's sitting on the Sony a7 IV. Yeah, I think white balance is at 5.6, and then the light inside is at 4.1. The light outside, there's a yellow gel on it. So just trying to create that late afternoon type of vibe interior shot. But yeah, with this setup, this is how this lens would react. The lens we were watching all that time was the Sigma 28-70. So right now I'm on the Helios 44-4 58, I believe. Yeah, this is how this sliding setup reacts. Once again, same camera setup, same everything. You can already tell some differences. I think I had to open up the aperture a little bit, but essentially this is what it looks like. So I decided to bring out my Sony FX3 just to see how different of an image I would get in a different camera. And all of a sudden I can see a big difference. I think one thing that I appreciate about the Sony FX3, man, is how you can use the LUT to shoot. So once again, this is proof of why pre-production is important. I think there's a lot of avenues and things that when I was shooting on the S7 IV that we couldn't see. And yeah, the A7 IV is a hybrid. This is a cine camera. Now we're back on the Sigma 28-70 with the Promise filter stuck on it. But yeah, so you get to see how different lenses react to the same light. I didn't change anything much. I don't know if we will see. Only in post will I be able to know if there's much significant difference in terms of the colors, in terms of anything. But then you have to make an artistic decision. So instead of just testing all the type of lenses that I have, you may have access to different lenses if you're going to go to a rental. And in pre-production, you guys can then come up with the look that you're going for. And that helps you a lot in terms of on the day of the shooting. You also know the focal lengths that you need. You also know a lot of these things, which is a great benefit of having a zoom lens is you have a multitude of focal lengths that you can use. The only disadvantage with it is you get your lenses, they tend to start at 2.8, but I know there's some super expensive ones that can go below, but essentially that's that. As I conclude this video, once again, let me know if you saw any differences in the lenses, and also if there's more you'd want me to talk about in terms of things that are going to pre-production. There's the law side of things where you need to get permits, where you need to get access to locations and contracts that need to be signed, things like that. We can always chat about those, but also we can always talk about more of the artistic, like what are some of the discussions you should be having with the DOP, some of the discussions you should be having with the assistant director, because the AD is responsible for the schedule. So you want to be able to talk about what's possible within time and range. A lot of times when you're working with professional actors, people in unions, there are certain things that you can do. There's no shooting 24 hours, so you have to be very, very careful with that. But yeah, pre-production is an important aspect of filmmaking, and I think it's something that as DOPs, as directors, we should take seriously. See you guys in the next one.